I would say to myself, be braver, be fearless, be braver to embrace just being yourself and spend less time trying not to conform and fit in. Spend the time kind of getting to know really who you are and what's important to you so that you can feel confident.
Welcome to the O for Food's Sake podcast, where we unwrap the joys and struggles of working in the food industry so you can thrive in what you do best while sustaining a rewarding and fulfilling career or business. We are your hosts, Lucy Wager, food industry consultant,
and Amy Wilkinson, food industry coach. We've worked in the food industry for the last 20 years and we're here to share with you the benefit of our hindsight. Our podcast is for you to find new ways to cope with the daily struggles, but mostly to inspire you to work on what's not working to ultimately improve your career or business long term. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of O for Food's Sake. Today we have an exciting guest with us who's going to talk to us about the challenges women face in leadership, and she's also going to be sharing practical strategies with us to help you as a listener lead with confidence, clarity and connection. Really, really pleased to welcome Nicky Foster, who is a leadership coach with over 20 years experience in retail, and she's really passionate about empowering women to overcome those challenges. Welcome, Nicky.
Hi, Nicky. I'm so excited about this episode. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to end this episode like renewed.
A big to-do list, hopefully, of all of these.
Yes.
Yeah.
Takeaway. Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here too.
It's an absolute pleasure. So Nicky and I met 3 years ago, maybe a bit more than that. We did the same coaching diploma way back when in lockdown years. And we met via that. We weren't on the same cohort, were you? I think you were like the next cohort after me, but we've kind of stayed in touch all the way through. And I think we obviously had that common thread of having worked in a similar industry. And we are going to be collaborating on an incredible program that Nicky's run in the past. And we're collaborating under Fearless Foodie. So a Fearless Women's program is going to be coming up. But today we're going to focus on like actionable insights that are going to be useful to the listeners. But Nicky, we always start with, tell us how you got here. Give us a bit of a background on, like, you've been in retail for a long time. Yeah, just give us a bit of a background on your career journey.
Yeah, so I started my retail journey as a buyer, then spent the next 20 years, probably a bit longer actually, in retail head office, kind of corporate retail head office environments, working in commercial roles. So everything kind of in buying, category management, so a bit of merchandising, trading. I did a bit of strategy for a while. And then my last role was in online. And the last 10 years, I was at Tesco. So I joined as a very ambitious buying manager, wanting to make a difference for customers, and worked my way through the business. And delighted to say I reached the position of category director, which was a real achievement for me as an ambitious woman in conditions that were pretty tough to get on. But I was really lucky on my journey, had lots of opportunities to be involved in leadership development programs, women in leadership programs, had the opportunity to work with some fantastic mentors and coaches. So really amazing 10 years there. And in that period as well, I took some time out. So I had maternity leave and had my daughter, which was lovely to take a bit of time out. And I went back to work, and this was pre-COVID, trying to juggle, quite a big job as a new working parent, trying to champion flexible working. This was, before any working from home. So flexible working in ththose days was probably a bit of a late start or an early finish, and maybe working 4 days a week. And then faced the challenge of redundancy. The division I've been working on was really less of a focus than it had been in the past. And the business decided that the team wasn't really necessary anymore. So then had this kind of dilemma of taking redundancy, which would buy me some time out with my daughter, which was amazing and everything I wanted. But at the same time, it was leaving behind everything that I'd worked so hard for. And I had a really difficult time actually afterwards, wondering, what I would come back to, but also really pleased to have some time out before she started school. So that led to like a big period of reflection actually in terms of what was important to me, and lots of time thinking about my values and what I wanted to do in the future, and came to the conclusion what I wanted to do was help other women, particularly help other women that had wanted to be future leaders and that were on similar journeys that I'd been on. And I'd always been a bit of a natural kind of go-to and coach and mentor. So decided to do a qualification in coaching, obviously where I came across Amy. and yeah, kind of work towards just really being able to give back to women that were walking a similar path. And I often use the expression, although I will say it's not the catchiest, I climbed the stairs, or you take the escalator as I climbed the stairs. And the idea that I feel like I learned so much and had this really tough climb up the stairs.
I like that.
Now I like to talk about helping other people step onto the escalator so they can go further and faster and higher than I ever achieved, by taking all the insights and lived experience that I've had to share with them and elevate them to be future women leaders.
That's a fabulous analogy. I love it.
Yeah, and such a journey as well. And I think it's really interesting, like just even thinking about those 10 years you were at Tesco's and the other retailers you were with beforehand, and the role you were in, because like stereotypes and prejudices and all of that exists. And when someone says a buyer, generally you think of a man, right? It's wrong, but we have those thought processes. So you must have been quite male dominant, it's in a male dominated role, lots of men around you. I know when we've had conversations before, like you were often the only woman in the room, right?
Yeah. In my first role, I was one woman in a team of 17. And I remember showing up there thinking, oh my God, like this is going to be really different. And actually one of my biggest challenges throughout, and I got better at it with lots of reflection and help, was just leaning into being myself, because to begin with, I tried to conform. I mean, to this day, I still wear lots of trousers rather than dresses, because for a while I wore trousers and a jacket because I was part of a team of boys, certainly when we were going out on, buying trips into the Far East and everything. I mean, there were lots of jokes about them calling me Mr. Nicky because, they hadn't really clocked that I was a woman, and I'd turn up and they'd be, oh, right, yes, oh, not Mr. Nicky then. So it took me a real long time to lean into actually being myself and doing things differently. And in many environments that there's a certain kind of type that's recruited, and when you break the mold a bit, that can feel a bit uncomfortable. But actually my strength and my power came from recognizing I could do things my way and do things a bit differently. And then that starts to get a bit of interest and a bit of traction, doesn't it? And people think, what are you doing over there? That's a bit different. And so that then built my confidence in just trying to be myself, really. But certainly that a major challenge, feeling that, I mean, we all talk about imposter, don't we? It's feeling like that different person and being in that room, sometimes all of, lots of men, and the voice in your head saying, oh, you don't fit in, they're not going to take you seriously, they don't think what you're talking about, and all of that kind of stuff, and really having to kind of overcome that on the journey.
Yeah. And I think it's that whole having to feeling like you've got to conform. And me and Lucy have talked about this before. I think what you're talking about are, and I know that this is part of that empowerment program, is allowing women to be themselves and see that as a strength, and see that acting like a woman in a leadership role is okay. Because I think there's almost that old school way of, because I often talk about, where do all the women go? Like, where are all the women at the top? Like, where do they go? Like, when I was younger and the role models weren't necessarily there. And the ones that were there, this is back then, were ones that acted like men, or overly, almost overly felt like they had to be aggressive as opposed to assertive, and all of those sorts of things. And what you're talking about is not that, because I know you and you're not that.
Yeah. And for those women, and, I had a leader very early in my journey, way before Tesco, who was really, really tough on me. And yet I was up and coming, I was a trainee. And I said to her once, why are you so much harder on me than everybody else? At a point where I was probably had been crying in the bathroom, first of all. And she said, well, because you need to realize if you want to get on and you're a woman, you're going to have to work much harder and you're going to have to be much tougher than any of your male counterparts. And it was just one of those light bulb moments. And I was like, I suddenly get it. You are this tough because, first of all, you're not able to show maybe some of your more feminine traits, because that's often considered, weakness. And I know things have changed because this was a long time ago. But she'd had to work so hard and jump through so many more hoops than anybody else that it had given her this toughness. And then she was kind of training me to be ready for it by being a bit harder on me.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested to know, do you think things are changing? Because I'm working with quite a lot of young women in buying roles at the moment. And I feel really, this sounds really patronising, proud of how they handle themselves and their assertiveness in the work environment. They're young, they're female, and they dominate, to be honest. There's more of them than there are men in that environment. And I can really see a difference compared to when I was their age. I wasn't in a buying role. But yeah, I'm just interested to see, are there different challenges for that generation compared to our generation?
I mean, I think things have definitely moved on, although I will say that one of the reasons that I started this piece of work was after taking a bit of time out after I left and coming back to sort of set up my coaching practice and falling into really working with women. I looked at lots of the research that was out there, the studies by people like Deloitte. And actually, the statistics hadn't really moved on as much as I'd expected them to since I started looking at them back in sort of 2008. And actually, for a while, I worked with a team of coaches who were working with women. And lots of the kind of the insights that they were giving were actually things haven't moved forward in terms of the way that women feel often at work and are treated as much as I'd expected. So that was a bit surprising for me, actually, because I really thought that, and there's been heaps of improvement, but there are still fundamental challenges for women. Although I do agree that younger, and not just women, I think younger generation are much more in touch. And I think COVID has played a large part in this, in young people connecting in what's important to them. So they've had that flexibility.
Yeah.
They are now able to think about, okay, I want to prioritize some time for me, whether it's friends and family or well-being, fitness or whatever. And I think in terms of younger people are more in contact with their values and what's important to them. So I know lots of young people that are interested in sustainability, and they're really thinking about whether the company they work for aligns with their own personal values.
Yeah.
So I think in that they are becoming more demanding.
Yeah.
And with that, definitely I see more young women coming through that are more assertive. And I love that.
Yeah.
The challenge is, and what I still see that hasn't changed, is that when they reach those more senior roles, they don't stick around in those roles. And there's a statistic from one of those Deloitte papers a few years ago, actually, that for every one senior woman director that's promoted, to leave. Because at that senior level, suddenly, well, first of all, many of them have got children at home. Some of them, like so many of us, have got older parents as well who need a little bit more support. And that tends to fall on women, not always, but we know women take most of the mental load in the home. And then often some of the things that are important to women in the workplace, like flexibility or well-being, then fall to them as a woman leader in the organisation to lead on as well. So for many of them, they can't do it all, and they move on. So whilst we've got lots of up and coming in
will they stay?
Yeah, and that's
a really interesting point.
What in the work that I try and do, it's about helping people at a more junior level on their journey have those insights and that clarity and that confidence so that they can be the leaders that they need to be in the future to make a difference.
Yeah.
And it's really important because we need good people in businesses. And if we're losing all these people, it's a real problem, isn't it?
And I do think there's that whole women bring a level of balance, and it is needed at a senior level to have a balance in the way a business is led and managed. And I was just thinking, just coming back to what you were saying before, Lucy, about the younger people that you know, but you also said the majority of them are women. And we had Tor on from the collective, didn't we? And she was talking about the leadership team is all women, or there's one man, I can't remember. I think there's something about, it's almost safety in numbers, isn't it? Like you can be your authentic self. Oh, I hate the word authentic. If you are around other people, it is when you're feeling like you're the minority, and therefore the office housework all gets given to you, and all the unconscious bias that ends up being you're the note taker and all of that stuff, even once you get to a senior level. It's ridiculous, but it happens, doesn't it?
Oh, it's probably important to say that, I talk about women because that's what I know and that's been my lived experience. But actually, what we're looking for more broadly is a more diverse workplace and a more diverse leadership teams, because statistically, the organisations, the businesses, even countries that have got the most diverse leadership team are the most successful, the most political. They have the best staff retention, they have the best staff satisfaction and well-being. So women is the bit that I know about, but equally there's merit in all of the other kind of groups, like you'd say, of diversity, working in similar ways to empower individuals, because actually the place we're trying to get to is having really diverse leadership teams, because that all those different experiences and thoughts.
Yeah. And I think there's something, isn't there? I'm just thinking about what you were saying about younger people understanding their values and that helping them into leadership roles. I work with a lot of women that are in those leadership roles already, but sort of have lost that sense of self and kind of get to a level, you sort of get into your 40s and you're like, who am I? What, like, how have I ended up here and what am I about? And actually to have that confidence in your own strengths to bring that diversity and be okay with it and not feel like you were saying, not feeling like you have to put trousers on because, you're actually somebody that wants to wear skirts. And actually that brings out this side of you that you love. Things like that. It sounds ridiculous, but like since I've done all the work I've done through coaching and stuff and got to know myself better, I wear really bright clothes. I used to wear black clothes all the time, but actually it brings me joy and it makes me bring out my personality in a situation, which is my strength and which helps other people. So it's almost that, isn't it? It's that getting to know yourself thing, isn't it? It's like, who are you?
And you could only be your best self if you are being yourself. And it takes a lot of energy to try and be somebody that you're not or demonstrate behaviours as somebody that you're not. And it took me a long time to realise that was one of the reasons why I was quite exhausted, because you're always trying to, and you'll come across it in coaching all the time. There's many women that perhaps they're not as assertive as some of the organisations they work in would like them to be. And actually they're constantly told, you need to speak up more in meetings, you need to contribute more or whatever. And actually maybe they're a bit more reflective and they like to be the person that has a think before they answers a question. And they're not going to push themselves forward into meetings because that's not their style. And it's about helping them understand that, unlock that insight, give them the confidence that that's who they are, and think about them what tools they can work on so that they can be their best selves and feel like themselves, but still achieve what they need to achieve in the workplace. So there's a lot about just taking time and connecting with who you are, what you bring, your strengths, what you're great at, and what's going to allow you to kind of show up as that authentic self in the work.
Yeah. And giving yourself the time and space to think about that stuff, because we're running around, aren't we, doing everything for everybody else. But actually, I sort of come back to it now every 6 months or a year, and I'm going to do that exercise myself, because sometimes you just need it as part of that confidence boost as well. It's like, oh yeah, no, that is what I'm good at.
And I think it must be hard for, I'm sure you see this a lot for women, because we talked about women not going to those senior positions, because when you go on maternity leave and you take that time out and you sort of have to like completely refocus your attention in a completely different way, that is really knocking to confidence, isn't it? And how do women overcome that? And, how do you help women in that stage of life?
Yeah. So, lots of the work that I do would be with women that are coming back from a break. And you come back a different person, don't you, really? Because all of a sudden you've gone off as you and you've come back and you've got, somebody else to think about as well. And it can be a massive knock to confidence, and there can be lots of limiting beliefs at play. I think the biggest challenge that I see with women in that space is just being realistic about what they can achieve and what's acceptable. Many of them come back with huge expectations that they can get back on the ladder. They can do it all. They can be the perfect parent. They can hold down a big job. They can, take time to exercise and do all the other things that they want to do. And there's some, first of all, reality and just getting really comfortable with you can only do your best. And that idea of when do things need to be perfect and when is good enough? Because I think many of them come back wanting to prove themselves, and they're navigating a whole new cycle in terms of ways of working. And, they've got a little one to drop off or whatever on the way. And their expectations of themselves are just so high. So helping them really understand what's important and just really be kind to themselves in that period. And coaching can be a great way to be quite reflective in terms of just venting some of that kind of feeling and frustration as well for women, and finding that clarity around what they need to do, and being all right with the fact that maybe that first year back after maternity leave isn't going to be the year that you're going to go on to be promoted, but what's the journey you're going on and where do you want to get to?
Yeah. It's almost a rebalance, isn't it? And it can be a bit wobbly. And I went to it was a Meet Business Women thing, and there was 3 women came on that are in senior positions, and I think the key message in it all was, you can't do it all. We can have it all, but you can't do it all. You can't do it all at once. And like actually delegating and like working out what is the most important thing at the time. And the reality is, and I think this is where the whole like men and women thing, men don't do it all. Like, why are we telling ourselves we have to have it all? Men do it because they're getting help a lot of the time at home or in work work and whatever, it's almost like we feel like we have to be superwoman and we don't. Like everybody, regardless of gender, needs support, needs a network around them, needs to be able to delegate stuff. That's how we get what we want, not by running ourselves into the ground, right? All right, folks, we're going to take a quick breather here to hear from our fantastic sponsors. They help keep the podcast going, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Ensuring food safety and quality is crucial. That's why businesses trust Microsearch Laboratories, part of the IFP Labs Group. UCAS-accredited Microsearch offers microbiological, nutritional and allergen testing for food, drink and water, delivering fast results and expert support. With over 30 years of experience, trusted by leading manufacturers and retailers, and a commitment to sustainability, Microsearch is your partner in product safety. Visit micro-search.co.uk to learn more.
Fearless Women Empowered to Rise is a programme designed to help women just like you step into their power, grow their confidence and take the next step in their personal and professional lives. Through practical tools, shared experiences and a supportive space, you'll build the skills and mindset you need to rise on your terms. If you're ready to feel empowered and take action, click the link in the show notes to join us. And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. Let's dive right back in.
We know that women aren't good at asking for help, particularly at work. And we also know that women aren't as good sometimes at saying no and setting boundaries again. So throwing that into the mix as you come back from maternity leave, a really important time to think about kind of setting those boundaries and telling others around you what help and support you need.
And what I was going to say as well, sorry, I know this isn't turning into like a maternity episode, but the other thing I think as well is when you've given birth, don't underestimate the recovery. It does take a real physical toll on a woman, which I think, we sort of can forget.
Yeah. And also, so not because we were talking about other responsibilities and, that I know there's lots of women listening that don't have children, but often then the responsibilities of elderly parents or other responsibilities end up happening and they take a toll on you and it all just,
the mental
it's all
load,
part,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The mental load being so much bigger. So, Nicky, what other sort of challenges do you see with women?
So typically the most common challenge, I guess, and it's true of me as well, is confidence. And I spend a lot of time talking about whether you want to call it imposter syndrome or mind talk or inner critic, but those stories that we tell ourselves that normally are we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not clever enough, we shouldn't be here, it was all a big fluke, I'm going to get found out. Generally, probably actually all of the conversations I have with women have that theme at some point. And women that are told they need to be more confident at work, particularly in situations where they might need to speak up or present to groups of people. I mean, that's a really common one. And I know for many of us, we just don't enjoy that, but it seems increasingly a requirement of organisations, particularly even if you're presenting on an away day or to a group of colleagues. But it is usually all about confidence. And we spend a lot of time unpicking why somebody wants to feel more confident. What does it give them? And why do they feel that lack of confidence? And then trying to break down building confidence in small steps. So knowing that confidence isn't something that you're just naturally born with. Yeah, there are people that are naturally more confident, of course, but it is a learned skill. So taking lots of small, tangible steps can help you build your confidence because you build your competence in taking the small steps, which then builds your self-belief. And then that allows you to feel a bit more confident. So you do the next thing, you take another small step, that builds your competence. That builds self-belief. It's, that kind of that idea of that circle.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of the work I do is in that space.
Yeah, because it feels like, I don't know if you find this as well, Nicky, a lot of women will be saying to me, I'll be confident when. And it's like, when I've, lost weight or when I just get through Christmas or, this, that and the other. And actually it's taking action that starts to build confidence.
Yeah, I've got that qualification that for confidence, put myself up when I've got that extra qualification. It's like you need on one page.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't naturally feel confident. And Amy, I know I've heard you talk about this topic before, as young women, we are told to grow up often, always, but, thinking about, this country predominantly to be good, be nice, be, sit nicely, be kind, be helpful, where boys are told to, rough and tumble, take risks, be brave or whatever. So we don't naturally build young women's confidence, I think, level. And then at school, we're often told to, work hard, do a good job, be nice, and you get start work and it's sort of a similar story, isn't it? Get head down, you do well. Whereas I think boys are naturally nurtured to be a bit more risk takers and
a bit bolder.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not great at that as women. And then I also face lots of women that say, I don't want to be too confident because people tell me I'm aggressive or people tell me I'm bossy.
Yeah.
And they really struggle with that balance between being assertive and not being want to be seen as assertive.
The term bossy really annoys me because it's like, when have you ever heard a man or a boy really being called bossy? Like a lot of the time it's a label put on women and it's not fair, is it? And the same behaviour in a man, the same language and behaviour can be used in a man, but when a woman does it. So I always think, and I'm really conscious of this with, the programme that we're going to be collaborating on, I always feel like we're not trying to say to women, you're the problem. Like, it's not all in your head. These biases do exist. Lucy, when we're doing training, we talk about, don't we, the challenges of being assertive. Yeah. And we have a big one on that slide, don't we? That's all about, because you've been told that when you're being assertive, you're being aggressive, but you're not. And I'd usually swear at that point and talk about how we need to continue to be assertive so that it becomes more socially acceptable that women are assertive.
Yeah, it's not about fixing women. It's about helping women understand who they are and how they show up. They can lean into being their best selves. And some of us will be naturally more assertive than others, but we shouldn't suppress that because for fear that we don't want to be seen as bossy or aggressive or annoying or many of the other things I've probably been told at some point over the last
And so confidence is a big one, but I know another one that we'll come on and talk about the program in a minute, but is that it's the women lifting other women up thing, isn't it? It's the connection that is so important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So having that tribe of women like-minded that you can share the successes with, because we're not very good at that as women, are we, in terms of celebrating success or blowing our own trumpet. And also when you're having a tough time, the support network that you've got that you can reach out to. I read something recently actually about senior leaders. I'm not going to try and remember the quote exactly because I might get it wrong, but it was basically 8 out of 10 senior women leaders of kind of FTSE 100 organizations. And I think it was partly in the States as well, attributed their success for having this kind of core group of women, tribe, network, whatever that they were with on that journey, and how that was their number one tip, strength, was having this kind of group that gave them that support.
That's really interesting.
And I mean, whenever you get a group of women together and you get that sense of psychological safety and people feel they can show up without judgment or without bias, and then they start to open up and share, and actually lots of insight and learnings normally come from that space because we're all facing the same challenges.
Yeah.
How many times you say it as a trainer, if somebody next to you has experienced it and they share their experience, then it's, it's that more isn't it?
That is the most powerful thing when you do anything in a group format, is that whole going, oh, I thought it was just me. Oh no, it's me too. And the first person speaks up and then everybody's like, oh, me too. And it just feels so good to not feel alone in that. And I'm almost thinking back to Nicky 20 years ago, and the woman in a room full of men and being the only one. That must have felt so alone. And what we're talking about is the opposite of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the amount of women that say, well, this is going to sound a bit crazy, but sometimes I've got this voice in my head that tells me I'm not good enough. Like they're the first. You must think I'm crazy. And I was like, yes, probably everybody who said that. And that in itself, and that sense of feeling like you're not the only one. And actually, this is normal because we talk about imposter syndrome all the time like it's a problem, but it isn't. It's just part of your brain, isn't it? And if you think about it from a scientific standpoint, it is your brain keeping you safe from an experience which is new and different that you haven't encountered before. So by being reflective and noticing that and realizing it, you can start to train your brain to get more comfortable with it and recognize it is just part of who we are. But for many women, I don't really want to say this, but there's something in my head that keeps telling me I'm not good enough. Oh, all of us, I think. And I know
Yeah.
it's more of men as well. It's not just women.
Yeah. No,
Mm.
exactly. I think that's a privilege that we have as coaches, isn't it? We've been in inside the heads of hundreds of people, and we now know that it's just the human condition. We all have that. Like, I found that really like validating, knowing that it's not just
I'm
me.
not crazy after all.
Yeah, exactly. So, Nicky, if you could go back and give your younger self advice, what advice would you be giving yourself?
I think I would say to myself, be braver, be fearless, be braver to embrace just being yourself and spend less time trying not to conform and fit in. Spend the time kind of getting to know really who you are and what's important to you so that you can feel confident in being you, and tell people what it is you want and need. Because I remember I had a brilliant line manager once, and I said to him, after waffling probably for about 20 minutes that I wanted to get onto the leadership development program, he said, so you want to be a director in the future, do you? And I said, yeah, I do, in a really long-winded way again. And he said, well, you know, I'm a man. You just got to tell me what you want and we can get on and make it happen, can't we? And I remember sitting there thinking, yeah, I do need to tell people what I want, because they're not going to guess, and no one do it for me, and no one's going to tap me on the shoulder one day and say, oh, Nicky, you're being promoted. You've got to get confident and be brave in telling people what you want. And it took me a long time to do that as a woman, because I felt a bit, I don't know if embarrassed is the right word, but I felt people are going to take me seriously.
It's uncomfortable, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, and if I say it out loud and then I don't get it, have I failed?
Yeah.
There's a bit of that going on, maybe. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, I think about in my 20s, that tap on the shoulder does sort of happen a little bit, doesn't it? Because you work really, really hard and you get rewarded, and people are watching you a bit more because you're younger, and, you know, they feel like they've got to make sure you're doing okay. So it gets noticed, and then you get those initial promotions. But once you know, there's less jobs the further up the ladder you get, and actually hard work, working all the hours God sends, all of that is not what gets you noticed and what gets you promoted. You have to change your strategy, but you also need to let people know that that's what you want. Because there's been so many times in my career where I've then taken a change or whatever, and people have said, you know, like, I've handed my notice in, and they're like, what would have made you stay? Or this, well, you never asked for it. Like, oh yeah, I could have done that, couldn't I?
Yeah, and I think many of us have been in that position where we've missed out on a job, and then we found out afterwards about, you know, the new person that's got the job, and someone said, well, where were you? You didn't put yourself forward. And that idea of, I didn't even think I was in the running, so much so I didn't even put myself out there. And actually I might have had a look in. So yeah, that idea of just being braver, taking time to know who you are, and then trying to be you, as cheesy as that sounds, but with that kind of courage, and obviously with that comes lots of vulnerability sometimes, but just leaning into that fearlessness.
Love it. I mean, brilliant wording to use, Nicky, for Fearless Foodies. So for people that are listening and are thinking, yeah, okay, I want to dive deeper into this, and Nicky's created this program and it's designed to tackle all the challenges that we've talked about head on. So do you want to just tell us a little bit of a brief kind of outline of what the course is about, or the program's about?
So it started actually as a bit of and I'm not going to lie, it was a bit of a low point when after I'd qualified to coach, and I was sort of set myself up in coaching practice, and things were all a little bit slow, and I was waiting for people to get back to me, and no one was kind of taking my phone calls. And I had oh my God, I don't know anything. I'm totally have no value in the world. What have I done? Moment. And I was doing some work for a friend that I do some work for as a retail buyer, and their company works with suppliers, helping them work really collaboratively with retail partners. And I'd put together this kind of retail toolkit as a buyer. And I thought, I know a bit about buying. Hopefully, you'd have hoped I'd learned something.
20 years in it, yeah.
Oh my God. I was quite reflective about my journey, and actually all the learning that I'd done as in leadership, thinking specifically about women, all the books I'd read, all the programs I'd been on, obviously the coaching qualification, which we shared was amazing in terms of the content. And I kind of created this toolkit in terms of, if I was actually going to go back to my past self, what tools would I give young Nicky in terms of getting on in the future? And actually, I often thought my journey was kind of putting all the puzzle pieces together. And there was a couple of moments where everything sort of aligned, and I had these light bulb moments in terms of, I get what's happening here. So I kind of created this toolkit, which I like to think is like a curated experience from all of the learnings that I've had, the lived experience, and then also the insights from working with lots of women. And they fell into kind of three big categories, really: clarity, confidence, and connection. So that the idea of the program was really born from that point in terms of a series of learning in the form of kind of interactive workshops and helping people on specific topics, bringing together groups of women to then think about those topics and learn and grow together. And then confidence, in terms of which underpins all of those things, in terms of how do you really get more confident. And I'd always felt what was missing from lots of the training that I'd done is, yeah, it's all good and well talking about these topics, but what can I actually do? What can I take away? Say, write an action plan. Well, I'm going to get more confident, or the next meeting I'm going to go into, I'm going to feel more confident. Well, that's not enough, is it? So trying to make them really tangible and actionable so that people can go away and have a big impact and make a difference. So this idea of lots of small steps coming to create big changes. So that's the theme of the program, is all underpinned by clarity, confidence and connection. And you do it together with another group of like-minded women on a similar journey, which just brings it all to life.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And also you have an element of one-to-one in there as well, don't you? Because I think that's really important, the mixture, because I think there's you get so much from a group setting, but there's just something about having like dedicated time that is just about you that makes it, really cements it in a different way that we all know, because we've all had one-to-one coaching and know it's amazing.
So you've absolutely 100% got to have one-to-one coaching in there, because it gives you that really confidential, safe space to make it really relevant and personal to you. Because whilst the themes are all the same, absolutely, with women, the unique action plans and the next steps are different for each of us. So you spend some time with the group, and then you also get some time one-to-one with a coach to work your own unique plan.
Yeah.
And when does it run? When's it starting?
So we're starting with a free webinar. Anybody can attend on the 24th of January. And if you register for that, whether you can come live or you just get the recording, you will get early bird access to the program. And then the program will open up for everybody else on the 27th of January. But the actual program starts at the beginning of March, because we feel like that is spring, that is new beginning time. And there will be a small group of women that you'll be working alongside, and the course and program will go on for 4 months. So you will get lots of support to embed you in the first half of this year. So it's really exciting. And we'll put all of the details in the show notes.
This has been an amazing episode. I was saying to you the other day, wasn't I, Nicky, that like I feel like I've got the feminist fire in my belly has reignited recently. And I just know that by women supporting women in the food industry, we can be the change we want to see in the industry. And it just gives me goosebumps. I'm very excited about this. But everything that you've talked about, I know will have resonated with not just women. You know, men have these challenges too. Some of them, they don't have the biases that we have, but, you know, we all have a bit of imposter syndrome. So I hope it educated some of the men listening. I think will have been really helpful for the women listening. So obviously we'll put stuff in the show notes for people to have a look at the program. But if people want to get in touch with you directly, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Oh, yeah, thanks. So either via the Fearless Foodies website, because I'm part of the team there, or you can find me on LinkedIn. If you want to ping a quick DM, that would be great. But yeah, follow Amy and the Fearless Foodies, and then all the information will come out very soon.
Fabulous.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Nicky.
Really lovely to meet you, Nicky.
Yeah,
Good
nice
luck
to meet
with the programme.
you for having me. It's been lovely.
Thank you. And we'll see everybody next time.
See you next time. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it, rate and review us. It really helps us reach more food industry pros like you.
For more resources, head over to our website, overfoodsake.co.uk, and join our mailing list to stay in touch.
And if you'd like to connect with us, come say hello on LinkedIn. We're both there, Lucy Wager and Amy Wilkinson.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.